Okay, everybody. Well, I want to take a few minutes to kind of talk about options and to dive into the different types of options, especially as it pertains to real estate investing. Options have been around forever. There's stock options, there's options on commodities, but I want to talk about options regarding real estate and kind of dive into the different types of options that we can use to control real estate without even owning it. And this is one of the best strategies out there because I think it's one of the safest strategies. If you think about an option agreement, it's actually called a unilateral agreement. It means only one party has to perform. And usually in most situations, only the seller has to perform. Us as the buyer do not have to perform and don't have to buy the property. It's much like leasing a car. And at the end of the lease, you have an option to buy it. You don't have to buy the car, but you have the option and it's a predetermined price. Okay, and what I like about options is the risk is very, very low. You can pay a small amount to have the right and the option to buy a property, and the leverage is tremendous. The amount that you can put down versus what you can control, the amount of real estate you can control. So let's dive into the different types of options real quick. And this is just a little mind map I put together. And I'm going to talk about these different options. The first one is the pure option, just a straight option. Okay, and what that really means. So basically, that's just an option of purchase between you and the seller. And there's usually a couple different types. There's a short-term option, usually like 6 months or less. There's a lot of real estate investors that use these short-term options to control real estate, then turn around and sell it. I know people that were licensed brokers that would get an option on the property instead of a listing agreement, get the option for 6 months, just like you would on a listing agreement, but then have the right to buy the property and sell the property in that time frame. So they can go and do their own marketing, they can qualify and find their own buyer and have all the legal rights to market the property, even on the MLS, and then sell that property within that 6-month window. Midterm option is what I would think of something between 6 months to 12 months. Usually it's longer than that short term, but not quite a long-term option. It's usually under that 12-month period. A long-term option is over a year, even up to 99 years. So a lot of times whenever you think of an option, people think of a lease option or option of purchase. A lot of times you're going to need a couple years to do that. So whenever I think of a long-term option, I'm usually thinking 3 to 5 years. A lot of times, the longer, the better you can get on this. And this is kind of the document that we use on the pure option agreement. I can kind of dive into this for a second and kind of show you this. There's a couple things you want in your option. And by the way, what I love about options is as you're talking to other real estate professionals and attorneys and people out there, you'll get ideas that you didn't think of that you want to put in your option. Here's a couple things. Main thing is the option. What's the purchase price of the option? If you buy it, what's the option consideration? The amount that you have to pay for the option. Do you get an extension on the option if you don't buy it in that time? And the right to assign. Those are all super, super important to have in your option agreement. Some of the greats have been around for a long time. I love Jack Miller. He has a great course on options. He's already passed, but he's one of the OGs, one of the original, gangsters out there that were doing options 20, 30 years ago. Peter Fortunato, Claude Diamond, David Tilney, Wendy Patton. A lot of these folks have been around for a long time and understand how options work and how you can use them for your benefit. So these are just a couple here. Specific performance, meaning like if someone doesn't perform, what are the remedies on that? There's a couple things in here that I really like. The main thing is the right to assign, the right to extend, and you got to kind of spell out the option, the purchase price, and the amount you're paying for that option. So that's basically a pure option. And that can be anything from, 1 or 2 months to 99 years. So that's how we use that. Now, let me jump back into my mind map. Go back here. And excuse me. So that's the pure option. The flex option. This is one of my favorite strategies to use with sellers. A lot of times whenever we're trying to wholesale a deal or trying to get a deal under contract and or for a flip or something like that, maybe we just don't know if we have the right price. So the flex option gives a little bit of flexibility to the seller, meaning that they have, it's a non-exclusive option, meaning that they have the right to cancel the agreement if they find a buyer. It's really simple to understand. I keep it with one page typically on this. Let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick and see if we can see what this looks like. Right here, just a couple of things is I want to point out is the seller does have the first right of refusal here. You know, the seller may cancel this agreement anytime if they find their own buyer or tenant, but must provide us the first right of refusal. I put 72 hours on here. You can put a different amount of time. It gives me permission to market the property on social media, on the MLS. If I find my own buyer, or if I'm trying to do a lease option to find a tenant buyer, then I can do it that way too. So that's the simple flex option. And I call it flex, like flexibility. A lot of wholesalers use this option, especially if they have a cash price that's below this option price, and then they'll try to get a flex option on it for about 2 weeks to see if they can find any buyers and to see what the market says. And if they still don't have a buyer high enough, and maybe they have a potential buyer and they come back with that price, they can go and renegotiate with the seller. And you're being very transparent. You're letting them know what's going on. And that's one of the reasons why I love about options. It's very simple. It's easier for the seller to understand, easier for the buyer to understand. We try to have a very transparent relationship. They know exactly what we're trying to do. They know that we're not living in the property, but they know that we're an investor trying to make a profit. And I just feel like it's a better way to do business a lot of times. Now, the JV option. This is one of my favorites and one of the ones that I have probably used the most in my career. Okay, now the JV option is basically a one-page option agreement that helps you control real estate deals, especially from other investors and wholesalers. Okay, and there's two types of options. One is the exclusive option. That means whether you find a buyer or your wholesaler or your investor finds a buyer, you still get paid. Okay, especially I've had times where I have a wholesaler that, hey, I can't find a buyer. Can you help me find a buyer? We'll sign an exclusive option. And they're like, hey, I'm getting all sorts of phone calls now. My phone's ringing off the hook. Well, it's because we just blasted out to like 50,000 people on email. We put it all over our social media and on our website. We sent it out to thousands of people on text message, and they're looking up the address, and the address links back to your website. So yes, you're getting some phone calls. So we still want to get paid because we're doing all that marketing. So that's why we do exclusive a lot of times. Non-exclusive is basically, a lot of times when you're dealing with non-exclusive options, usually it's more experienced investors and wholesalers. They have their own buyers list, are already doing their own marketing. They're okay with opening it up to a few more avenues. But they typically, a lot of times when they're doing non-exclusive, it kind of ties hand in hand to the different types of strategies on the way you profit. And let me talk about that. Typically, we love to do a 50-50 split. If I'm doing an exclusive option, we're pretty much doing a 50-50 split. If it's a more seasoned investor and they're already marketing the property, they have their own website, they have their own email list, they already have that already going, and we're just trying to see if one of our buyers can pay a little bit more, then we'll offer what's a net price. We'll find out what net price that seller or that investor wants to make, and we'll add our fee on top of that. Okay, here's a copy of what the JV option agreement looks like. Two main paragraphs here. Paragraph 1 talks about the time period that you have, right? And whether it's exclusive or non-exclusive. Paragraph number 2 talks about if there's a 50-50 split. Now, if it's a net price to the wholesaler or the investor, I just delete paragraph 2. Okay, I'm trying to make it very simple and easy for all of us to do business. I'm able to do business all the time with these folks, do lots of deals with folks, and I usually have no problems at all. So All right, let me get out of here. And that's the JV option. I love the JV option. It's probably the one I've used the most in my career. I've done lots and lots and lots and lots of joint venture deals with other wholesalers. It's one of the ways I teach my beginning wholesaling students to get into the business, because it doesn't require any upfront marketing. They're not meeting with sellers. They're not negotiating on deals. They're basically just seeing what what deals are out there that wholesalers are advertising, and to see if they can find a buyer for it. Now, lease options. Again, this is one of my favorite topics here. What is a lease option? It's an option of purchase with the right to lease the property. Okay. Now, there's going to be a couple of different types we're going to dive into here. Okay. One is the lease option that gives you the right to sublease the property. You know, so whether you're going to live in there or you're going to have someone else, you have the right to sublease it. Okay. And most of my lease options are set up with the right to sublease. Typically, I'm not the one leasing the property. I want to have the right to sublease it, but I could still live in that property if I decided to. So it works both ways. I just like to have that clause in there to have that right to sublease it. Now, the one of the basics out there, one of the basic strategies as an investor, just to do what's called a lease option assignment. A lease option assignment is basically you find a seller, a landlord that wants to sell a property for a certain price, willing to rent it for a year or two, and you just marry them with a tenant buyer. Okay. And so basically with the lease option, we fill that out. It gives us all the information on there, the lease terms, the purchase terms, the option amount, and the right to sublease it, the right to assign the deal. And if we're assigning the deal, we will do a lot of times just do a straight lease option assignment, and we get to keep that full amount. If we're doing what's called a cooperative assignment, I'll show you what an assignment agreement looks like. It's pretty simple. There's an assignment where you can just get the assignment fee. There's also an assignment you can put in there where the assignment fee that you're getting goes towards the full purchase price. Most of the time I just do straight assignments on most of those. And a cooperative assignment is where you're splitting some of that assignment fee with the homeowner. Pretty simple. You get some of that assignment fee, and the homeowner gets the assignment fee. One of a lot of lease option assignment investors really work on that cooperative assignment strategy, because they can do this virtually. They can have the owner and landlord show the property. They can have them help pick out the actual final tenant in there, as long as they're following fair housing guidelines. And it can be a pretty easy process. You're just out marketing, and the owner's helping you show the property. So that's called a cooperative assignment. So we got a straight lease option assignment. We just assign the deal over. Cooperative assignments where we split some of the funds with the homeowner. Okay. And then the sandwich lease option is basically two parts. You got the option of purchase paperwork, and then you have the lease paperwork. Okay. And it also gives you the right to sublease the property, gives you the right to sell it on a sandwich lease, on a lease option as well. Typically on a sandwich lease option, you're going to have at least 3 to 5 years with the homeowner that you're dealing with. And then you want to have a shorter time frame, usually 1 to 2 years, with your tenant buyer. If you're staying in the middle on a sandwich lease options, that means there's going to be 3 paydays. There's going to be the upfront option fee. There's going to be monthly cash flow that you're making on the arbitrage between what the rent that you're paying the homeowner and the rent that you're collecting. So let's say that you're paying the homeowner $2,000, but you're collecting $2,500. That means you're keeping $500. So that's payday number 2. Payday number 3 is a big lump sum at the end. That's where you make the big bucks. That's where the difference on what your option price with the seller was to the option price with the tenant buyer, you make that difference. And typically those are going to be $30,000 and up on most homes. So it's a great strategy. Reasons why a lot of investors, even investors that are using creative financing and Sub-2 to buy properties, they sell on lease options, because it's a little bit of a hands-off strategy where you're putting a lot of the maintenance and repairs onto the shoulders of the new tenant buyer. So it's a great strategy. It's one that one of my friends used, and he flipped a house and made over $100,000 in about 3 years after he Airbnb'd it. I can also add that little video here. So that's a sandwich lease option. So those are all the different types of lease options. Okay. And again, like I said, options are a powerful strategy. It's one of the easiest ways to get started in real estate without owning properties. You can control the properties without owning them. You can get in and control these properties with literally pennies on the dollar. I'm talking like $10 contracts, $100 contracts, sometimes as much as 1% of the purchase price, but a lot of times you can negotiate that. And options have been around forever. I mean, this is how Walt Disney bought up all the land around Disney World using options. Options were used to buy the property around that was later used for the United Nations. So it's a very powerful strategy. You can use options to control land, control houses, to control commercial property and all that stuff. So if you have any questions and you want to find out a little bit more about options, just go to www.brandontheman.com or shoot me a text or give me a call at 480-818-6460. I do answer my own phone. And if you want to get a copy of this mind map or a copy of the options that I use, just shoot me a message and let me know that you want to get a recording of this video and options, and I'd love to send that out to you. Thanks so much.